The city's economy shrank 3.5% in 2022. Secondary schools resume full-day classes, and some cross-border students are keen to return to school. And protests and clashes across France over the government's retirement reform plan. Hello and welcome to TVB News. Hong Kong's economy shrank 3.5% last year. The number is worse than gross domestic product in 2009, when the city was hit by the fallout from the great financial crisis. Looking ahead, the government and business sector said they are optimistic the economy will pick up this year. Jackie Lin with more.
In 2022, Hong Kong was marked by the fifth wave of the COVID pandemic and its economic fallout. That's before the government phased out a slew of social distancing measures and travel restrictions towards the latter part of the year. According to advanced estimates from the Census and Statistics Department, Hong Kong's gross domestic product for the fourth quarter declined 4.2% year-on-year, meaning GDP retreated for all 4 quarters last year. Starting September, the government scrapped quarantine mandates for inbound travelers with a 0+3 arrangement and further eased social distancing curbs in October. In the fourth quarter, private consumption expenditure rebounded 1.7%, ending the downward trajectory over the previous 3 quarters. Still, worsening external factors such as rate hikes continue to weigh on the city's trade performance. Total imports and exports of goods cratered some 23% and 25% year-on-year, respectively. Gross domestic fixed capital formation, which reflects foreign investment, also shed more than 10%, marking a drop for the 5th consecutive quarter. Looking ahead, Chief Executive John Lee said Hong Kong's economy will make great strides with the reopening of borders with the mainland and the rest of the world.
我深信香港嘅未來係風光感受。
Lee said more upbeat spending sentiment would boost the travel, retail and catering industries, which could drive the overall recovery of the economy.
香港係一個國際城市。
A view echoed by Jonathan Choi, chairman of the Chinese General Chamber of Commerce Hong Kong, who believes a promising outlook is in store for re-export trade, financial and professional services this year. Business scholar Simon Lee, meanwhile, struck a more cautious tone.
I don't think that everything can be solved by the opening of the border. Because the bases are too low, I think rebound is possible, but not too optimistic. Why? Because, the economic growth of China slowed down, and also with the strong US dollar, which means strong Hong Kong dollar. Then people from mainland, they would think that the service and the goods in Hong Kong are comparatively expensive, more expensive than before. This will have adverse effect on our GDP growth.
He suggested the government offer more tax rebates to woo more businesses and foreign investment to Hong Kong so as to create more job opportunities in the city. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Hong Kong reported 455 new PCR positive cases and 5 more deaths. The city's secondary schools resumed full-day classes on campus today, but the government has yet to announce arrangements for cross-border students. Some of them decided not to wait and returned to classes in Hong Kong today after paying for their PCR tests on the mainland. Sharon Tang reports.
Shangshui MTR station was packed with students rushing back to school this morning. Many of them are cross-border students. They need a negative PCR test result and secure a slot to return to the mainland when the school day is over. Against all odds, this secondary school student is finally going back to school after 3 years. The last time he was here, he was a primary student. The student said his trip is worthwhile, adding that he's only fulfilling his civic duty by getting tested. This boy said having online classes without meeting his classmates over the past few years had been a boring experience. This father said it's acceptable to have his child tested on the mainland every other day, as each test costs only 12 yuan. More than 30 cross-border students returned to this primary school today. The principal said some students spent an hour and a half going to school today due to border restrictions. For cross-border students, he hopes the authorities will lift quota and testing restrictions by the end of the month, allowing the remaining 220 pupils to return to the campus. Meanwhile, most public hospital wards in Hong Kong have relaxed visiting arrangements starting today. Visitors no longer need to make prior bookings, and they can meet the patients for up to 2 hours. Only 2 visitors are allowed each time, and they still have to present negative test results. But those who have displayed symptoms such as fever and cough, as well as children aged under 12, are not allowed to visit patients. So far, the 5th wave of the pandemic has claimed more than 13,000 lives. Government pandemic advisor Yuen Kwok-yung suggested earlier that an independent panel be set up to review what could have been done better in terms of pandemic control, which the chief executive has turned down. Lau Chak-sing, the Dean of Medicine at the University of Hong Kong, who is also a government pandemic advisor and was previously tight-lipped over Yun's suggestion, said today that a review is needed. He said it is important to review how primary health care can be better developed, especially for the elderly. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Chinese health officials said the current wave of COVID infections in the country is coming to an end, adding that different cities and towns have developed an immunity barrier against the coronavirus. After the Lunar New Year holidays, more people have returned to Beijing. In this shopping mall in Shaoyang district, some people took off their face masks to enjoy food and drinks. Some Beijing residents said most forms of activity have returned to nearly the same as before the pandemic. Meanwhile, Beijing authorities said they will carry out a survey to help assess the COVID situation in the city. This includes conducting serological tests on about 5,000 residents across 16 districts in the capital city. America and 3 allies have imposed further sanctions on Myanmar, with curbs on energy officials and junta members, among others. It's been 2 years since military generals in Myanmar, also known as Burma, led a coup against the quasi-civilian political system that was created by the military.
Conditions, however, in Burma continue to grow more dire. So that's why we're taking some additional action today to impose sanctions on 6 individuals and 3 entities linked to the regime's efforts to generate revenue and procure arms. So we're going to continue to work with allies and partners to push for accountability for the military's atrocities.
This as the United Nations Special Investigator on Myanmar warned that the military rulers plan to seek legitimacy this year by organizing a sham election. Tom Andrews, in a report to the Human Rights Council, said the coup on February 1st, 2021 was illegal and added that the government, such as it is illegitimate. He noted that most of the international community has refused to accept the military's claim to be a legitimate government, with the exception of a small minority of countries. There have been protests and clashes across France over President Emmanuel Macron's plan to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. Macron says it is necessary in order to ensure the viability of the French pension system. But opinion polls show a substantial majority of citizens are against such a move. Anger spilled over on the streets of Paris, with clashes breaking out between demonstrators and riot police. The turnout across France was around 1.27 million people, according to the Interior Ministry figures. France's powerful unions have called for the reform to be withdrawn, but the government appears ready to stand its ground. Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne was forced to concede the protests had been heard, but wholesale changes to the reform are unlikely. Ukraine is gaining wider European support in its quest to secure fighter jets for its war with Russia, though the United States and Britain so far remain firm in refusing to supply warplanes to Kyiv. Lithuania has called on Western allies to provide Ukraine with advanced jets, along with other Baltic states and Poland. Ukraine has already managed to secure main battle tanks from Europe. Spain being the latest country, they say they will send up to 6 German-made Leopard 2 tanks to the front lines. Nazvi Karim reports.
As Ukraine presses European allies for increasingly advanced weapons, Russia says its forces are closing in on the strategically important city of Bakhmut in the eastern Donetsk region. The Russian Defense Ministry says it has captured the town of Blagodatne, one of a number of successes it has claimed near Bakhmut. Bakhmut has been the focus of intense fighting in recent weeks, providing a crucial supply line for Ukrainian forces. This as Ukrainian senior officials press European allies for fighter jets they say they need to turn back an expected Russian offensive towards the end of winter. On Tuesday, Ukrainian Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov met his French counterpart Sébastien Lecornu in Paris to discuss Ukraine's aviation needs.
We discussed the possible model of aircraft or fighter jet as a platform. We didn't discuss the name or the brand. We discussed the platform because it's our necessity to make stronger our capabilities to defend our airspace.
French President Emmanuel Macron said on Monday that France had not ruled out sending fighter jets to Ukraine, but on condition that the weapons do not touch Russian soil and France's own defense capacity and security are not compromised. Poland, Lithuania and other Baltic states are also reportedly keen to support Ukraine with air power, with the United States and Britain, for now, saying they have no plans to give Kyiv fighter jets. Ukraine has already snapped resistance among EU nations in terms of tanks, with Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba saying 12 countries are in the coalition providing main battle tanks. He said Kyiv is set to receive up to 140 vehicles in the first wave, without offering a timeline for delivery. These include American M1 Abrams, German-made Leopard 2s, Britain's Challenger 2 tanks, and possibly French Leclercs. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the call to supply Ukraine with fighter jets shows that European countries seem ready for escalation of the war without thinking of the consequences. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Still ahead, proposed changes to the law to keep up with technological advancements in automobiles. Walk-in services at smart identity card replacement centers will be suspended from tomorrow. Welcome back. To cope with the latest advancements in automobiles, including electric cars, the government is proposing changes to the law which will allow more functions to be performed from screens inside vehicles. Sharon Tang has more.
These days, drivers can learn about the speed and navigation through the touch screens inside their vehicles. Some even use them for music and phone calls. In fact, many functions, except for viewing the vehicle's situation real time, are illegal under current laws. Offenders face a maximum $10,000 fine and 6 months in jail. Quite often, these illegal functions have already been removed once the car leaves the factory to comply with the rules. Sammy, an electric car owner, told us that the city's laws are outdated. She said if there are so many restrictions on car panels, then authorities should not have allowed electric cars into the market in the first place. Sam, who also owns an electric car, said automatic parking is a very attractive function, especially when the streets around town are so narrow. But that too is illegal in Hong Kong. Last year, the government said it would make amendments to laws related to road safety, such as allowing drivers to park cars remotely. Today, the matter was brought up in Let's Go.
As more people use AVs, we may have cases where changes happen, but they are not anticipated. We want to move with the times. That's why we want to allow greater flexibility for officials to make subsidiary legislation.
Authorities added it will look into connecting the use of electric cars between Hong Kong and the mainland. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
The Immigration Department announced earlier that the last application date for placement of new smart identity cards will be extended to March 3rd. Today, the department reiterated that applicants have to make an appointment in advance and walk-in services will be suspended from tomorrow. Christy Khan reports.
The city's smart identity card replacement exercise will come to an end in March. The Immigration Department said that up to the end of 2022, more than 7 million new smart identity cards have been issued. After the reopening of the border between the city and the mainland, more people have flocked to different smart identity cards replacement centers to apply for the new Hong Kong ID cards. Some of them are recent returnees from the mainland, like this woman. She says she immediately returned to Hong Kong once quarantine-free travel resumed between the two regions. Some others, like this man, decided to visit one of the centers during the final stage of the replacements exercise.
I had travel plans, so I thought they would have to take my ID away, which will be a little inconvenient if I travel abroad. So I decided to do all my traveling and then come back and get it.
People who failed to make an appointment chose to go directly to the replacement center. This resident says she couldn't make an online booking as the quotas for the coming weeks had been filled. However, the Immigration Department reiterated that they won't handle applications without appointments from tomorrow.
We appeal to all residents who wish to replace their identity cards to make booking online or through our telephone booking system. And after the end of the replacement exercise, residents who wish to replace their new smart ID card can still do so at the registration of persons offices. So they do not need to rush back to Hong Kong.
The department added that returnees from overseas will not be considered as having breached any regulations if they don't renew their ID cards during their stay in the city that is less than 30 days. All smart identity card replacement centers will cease providing services from the 4th of March. The Immigration Department said they will closely monitor the situation and consider implementing more measures to offer assistance to residents, such as extending the service hours of registration of persons' offices. Christy Khan, TVB News.
Starting today, cannabidiol, or CBD, is listed as a dangerous drug in Hong Kong, alongside heroin and cocaine. Those found guilty of trafficking or illegal manufacturing of CBD or its products are liable to a maximum penalty of life imprisonment and a fine of $5 million. Illegal possession or consumption of CBD is punishable by up to 7 years behind bars and a fine of $1 million. As of Sunday, the government collected 77,000 CBD items at collection points for citizens to discard cannabidiol products. They range from skincare products to edible oil and supplements. The Customs and Excise Department said officers will ramp up spot checks at the airport and reminded the public not to bring CBD-infused products from overseas. That is the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.